Yep.
Okay? But I don't believe it. You know that by now. You know I don't believe technology. Never trust technology. That's how they get you. So hold on. I'm going to refresh my thing, and I'm sure I'm going to see people here. And so I'm going to wait and see people here. Are we live?
I think so.
We are live because I see myself, and I've got like this ponderous type of face. So I'm certain of it now. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the button. I'm going to go back to you, and we did it. Exciting. Right. Exciting. Cool. And I make it a little bit more exciting because I just don't trust it. So I'm like a kid running down the stairs on Christmas Day to get their presents.
Right.
I'm just not sure my parents, because that's the way they were, actually. They were kind of messed up like that, have put out all the presents. Right. So,
right.
So I've run down the stairs, and the presents are under the tree. So we're good to go, man.
Yeah, I snuck down once at 5 a.m. while everyone was still asleep and looked at stuff, and I was like, oh, I'll never do that again. I felt so bad.
I was such a horrible kid that I used to look through their closets and look through every single thing until I found the present. And usually like a day or two before. And then if it wasn't a present that I liked, I'd be so depressed. No. And then I'd be like, what do I do when I open it up and this present sucks? It's kind of bad when you know that they got you. Not only do you know that they got you a bad present. That's the worst. It's the worst thing. So I see Jack Posabiec is here. So thank you so much for being here, Jack. That's very thoughtful of you. And I think I saw it said pop-up Posabiec today, I think. So I think I might have seen your dad on your on your Periscope. So thank you so much for being here. I see Chuck is here. So thank you very much. And thank you so much to you, John, for being so available at the last second. I've got questions. I've got a lot of questions for you, and I've been doing thinking. So this is a chance, hopefully, for everybody to enjoy this dinner with friends, and we're all going to think out loud. Is that okay?
Sounds great.
Okay, let me turn down my music. It might be now. I know, but the silence is painful, isn't it? So again, I want to say everybody, I'll say hello to everybody. Jack Posabiec says 2 rock stars. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us, because that really makes 3 rock stars. And I'm so excited that at some point soon, I'll have successfully persuaded Jack to do a Periscope about his documentary about Antifa. I'm so fascinated by Antifa. And, I'm such an inquisitive person, and he infiltrated. John, are you aware of that he made this documentary and he infiltrated Antifa?
No.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And I've just got so many questions, because Antifa is so many things, right? It's this kind of like, it's this very intricate kind of creation. And I'm curious how he's defining it. And he's got some historical context. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious, how would you define Antifa, John?
Open source movement. And so what that means is there's lots of small groups, all coordinating. Individuals can join. You get into the information stream. You act on your own. There's no central leadership. And that everyone is free to innovate, to take action. And if that action works, everyone copies it. So it tends to be really, really innovative and very, very quick. We saw, open source insurgencies work in Iraq. We saw it work in the 2016 campaign with for Trump, and we see it in protests like Egypt and Tunisia, toppled governments, open source protests.
But let me just come in for just 1 second, because I understand open source insurgencies, and I'm a big fan of what you've written, and sure. It's kind of upsetting what you've written, because it comes true, right? And so it's kind of like that birthday present that I don't like, and then a few days later it kind of comes true. That's some of what you've written, and you wrote several weeks, if not months, in advance that the banks were going to be used as this lever to shut down guns, and then it really took off. So can you give a bit of a narrower definition? And Jack, please do contribute here, because I'm very curious about Antifa, not, with more precision about Antifa, kind of the characteristics of Antifa, because it's more, it seems to be more than just a whole bunch of upset people joining together and kind of driving each other crazy and then shooting off in a direction. There is some history to it, right? There's a historical record to it that they've attached themselves to. Almost sentimentally, they've attached themselves to it.
The Antifa, anti-fascist organization goes way back to Germany. It was the replacement for the Front Fighters Brotherhood. It was a group of a militia, a left-wing militia that protected all the left-wing groups initially, and that it ran into the big. It ran into problems with the police in 1929 in Berlin, and 17 people were killed, and they were banned as an organization, which let the right-wing groups grow really, really big in their absence. And then Antifa was established too late in 1931 and 32 to try to combat the right-wing militias. The difference is that the Antifa wasn't kind of an organization that protected all the left-wing groups. It was actually a Stalinist organization when it was reformed. So it was only to protect the Stalinist Communist Party inside of Germany. So they fought, most of their efforts were actually fighting the other left-wing organizations, other left-wing parties, to try to achieve dominance. And while they were trying to do that, the right wing took over. So so it has a weird history. What we see today isn't, it's tied to what's back then, but the Red Front, Rotfront, yep. And the group today, at least from what I can see, it looks very open source. It looks increasingly tribal, network tribal, and it allows Biden to go on TV and say, hey, it doesn't exist. Right. And so, you can claim that it doesn't exist, but it actually is there. It's tangible. It's actually innovative. It's taking action. But it doesn't have a central hierarchy that you can point to and identify the key individuals. What else you want to know about it, or you're interested in? I think Jack would do a fantastic.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that discussion with Jack, because I'm also very interested in kind of the social movement, because it seems to be kind of the most powerful social movement of the last 50 years, to the point that it seems to very quickly, I think of it as the phalanx for the megacorps, because they've certainly been kind of employed by the megacorps to just cause a lot of disruption, cause a lot of political disruption, displace a lot of the DC nobles, which they're really doing effectively. Kind of displace, in fact, the entire political apparatus, it seems. And they've been so successful that you've got people like AOC, who every time she tries to catch up to them, they run faster and they get a lot of distance from her. And it just seems to me that now she's just kind of clinging on to the memory of that baton she once held very briefly, because they've just outraced her.
She kept her head down. I mean, she was told to keep her head down, and she kept her head down. They put her into line. They said, if you want to participate in the Democratic Party, don't get out ahead of us. Don't upset this election. And it was, Biden's campaign was a non-campaign. It was, hide in the shadows, don't get interviewed, don't do anything, just let COVID do the work. Just let it's like the Russian winter. The Russian army doesn't have to engage the French army, or doesn't have to engage the German army. It just gets chewed up, and let the guerrillas attack it from the sides. The Cossacks chew it up, let the Russian winter do its work, and they just go down. But in this case, it didn't necessarily work out that way. It came very, very close.
When you say it came very close, what do you mean?
I mean, the election, it wasn't as much of a romp as they thought it was going to be.
Yeah. So I had, broadcasted to everybody several months before that I thought it was going to be a landslide for Joe Biden. And and that it needed to be a landslide. And let me just correct that so people don't get too infuriated with that. Let me clarify that a little bit. I expected so much moral corruption that if you call somebody Hitler for 4 years, and if you're sending out these beacons to a lot of kind of already emotionally unstable or a lot of people with a lot of anxiety, and you're sending out beacons that this person is your worst foe. It's kind of like they were sending out beacons to like the Winston Smiths. Everybody was, they were sending out beacons so that ultimately everybody would have to confront their worst fears, and they would point them at back to Donald Trump. So
Right.
it was really interesting to observe. So I thought there was going to be a lot of cheating. I think that there is, and I'm a Democrat. I think everybody knows that. But I'm so proud and happy for what Ali is doing, for what Jack has been doing, because I think that going forward, there has to be some type of a movement that that people can attach themselves to in opposition to the megacorps and in opposition to the establishment, because clearly they're at war with us. So I expected Biden to win in a landslide, and I also expected that history would not record. Would not make any notation for how that landslide occurred. So it almost didn't matter how it happened. All that matters is it happened. Right? That's the way history is going to record this. So I because of that, I expected Biden to win. And then I was thinking about it last night, and I was thinking, maybe Donald Trump just should have from day one just blown up the spot. Maybe. I listened to Cernovich. He did a Periscope and he deleted it, and it was a brilliant Periscope. And he was saying how upset he was with kind of the conservatives that were out there and how we feel kind of betrayed and abandoned by them. And I'm happy that people are doing Stop the Steal, because there's got to be some inquiry into truth.
Yeah, I mean, Trump is exploiting all the weaknesses, the vulnerabilities of the system right now, because they were just they were allowed to accumulate over time, right? I mean, for instance, like the election process is a long and drawn out affair, which in terms of certifying the votes, there's a long process. But I mean, it appears short because the media basically has taken it upon themselves, or arrogated the position of declaring the winner and saying, okay, it's all over, and you have to believe us, right? And that there's no challenge after the media says, stop, it's already done. And so Trump was able to say, okay, wait a second, that's not true. Let's stop that. And the media was like, of course, you can't do that. It's impossible. And then another thing was that the data from the polling data is crap. I mean, it's really hard to actually make any projections, and it's hard to actually prove that the votes were made in the right way. There aren't all these checks, there aren't all these IT checks and everything else in order to keep they've been fought against for many, many years to keep the election as easy. The voting process is easy to do as it could be, in order to maximize the number of people voting. But that means that the data isn't really that good. So that means a lot of challenges are possible. But there's a lot. Yeah, go ahead.
So I thought in 2016 I was certain that Trump would win, and I actually kept a log back then, which one day I should share with people. But I knew that he was going to win. I knew that he was an insurgent, that the establishment would never allow an insurgency again, and I saw all the mechanisms that they employed to stop Trump. And one of the most effective of them was they didn't allow his administration to be profligate, right? So with Obama, it was just this absolute corruption, and HHS was used as a piggy bank, and Obamacare was really done as a piggy bank. And the way it was structured, I'm kind of an expert on it, but I don't want to bore people with it. But was kind of crooked, and several of his staffers, Sebelius and many others, went on to join private equity firms so they could really exploit the opportunities for corruption that they created. And that gets kind of boring and stuff, but they're just making a mint. And now, and then with Trump, they didn't really allow that to happen because there was such a watchful eye that the normal corruption that just goes on every day. They just even wouldn't permit that to occur, except for Mitch McConnell.
Yeah.
And I guess a little bit of HHS. And he's been in a war with the pharmaceutical company. So I just didn't see, knowing all the apparatus that was against him, I think that they could cheat and the media would cover up. And, these conspiracies normally fall apart when the public doesn't tolerate them. And the media was doing such a good job of covering up for real idiots. I mean, this was an idiotic conspiracy. This was like the Passy conspiracy, Catalan conspiracy, except perpetrated by idiots who couldn't even keep their stories straight. So the media had to kind of keep it together. But again, so thank you so much for saying that, Jack. Take notes, everyone. This will get banned fast. I hope I don't get banned. I really do. I get shadow banned a lot, but I hope I don't. So, John, I didn't even give you a chance to introduce yourself, so we'll do that at the end. It'll be like one of those Marvel movies where the credits roll the intros roll at the end, right? So we'll know who you are at the end. What happens next? What happens to Trumpism? How would you define Trumpism?
Well, I mean, the Republican Party is the party of dissent now, right? And the Democratic Party, the left, is the consensus. And the consensus is trying to become dominant and to force everyone to adhere to that consensus, to actually toe the line. And that's why we're seeing all this efforts at censorship and the like. And Republican Party is all about the dissent, keeping that going. Now, what is on the right? There's an effort to see tribalize like we've seen on the left. And there's a tribalization process that occurred really, really quickly near the end of the campaign that really kicked in. And that was, in essence, what drove the results there at the end. But what does that tribalization mean? I mean, okay, so yeah, but it's still going. Trump has been able to stay relevant and keep it going by keeping the disruption going. Disruption makes dissent possible. You break things down, you stop things from solidifying. And he's been able to do that through this challenge to the election, and stay relevant and stay ahead of things.
But may I go backward for just 1 second?
Yeah, sure.
I'm very curious about this, and I asked people on Twitter this morning, how would you define Trumpism so that we can figure out how to proceed going forward with whatever this movement is, which I really like this movement. And I think the movement's going to become even more powerful. So when I see Ali doing what he's doing, where he's taking all this kind of social activism online, right? And social activism online, social media has been already appropriated by the elites to be this demobilizing agent, right? If you're the adversary, they treat, they've actually got adversarial programming. So it's meant to fragment and to demobilize. And they've done a very good job of, he's done a very good job of mobilizing, and a few others too. I just know Ali a little bit more intimately. So they've done a very good job. He's done a very good job of taking these people online, right? Yep. Their online presence and converting that to kind of a real world offline value. But I think we have to define what Trumpism is so we can figure out how to proceed with that.
The dissent is about anti-establishment. It's anti post-Cold War establishment that has screwed up again and again and again. The level of mismanagement we saw over the last 25 years was intense, right? So we had, we had WMDs that got us into a war in Iraq, which was people tried to tie it to 9/11, which is like nuts, rather than going after Saudi Arabia. A 17-year, 18-year war in Afghanistan that never ended, the forever war. We had the financial crisis, and that was really the turning point for me, is when nobody went to jail after the financial crisis.
No, I understand.
It was just like that. But that's the
I understand.
The establishment lost its legitimacy, right? And so this effort to get everyone to, stay in line and continue with the establishment is the problem. It's not reforming itself. It's not fixing itself. It's not finding ways to actually operate in this new environment and create, an attractiveness that gets people to come back.
Well,
All it is doing is like it's yelling at people.
Here's my question.
People to get in line.
Here's my question. It's really to everybody, which is let's figure out what Trumpism is. So I'm very interested in how people here who are joining us, and thank you all so much for joining us, have kind of defined Trumpism for themselves, because is this something that's exclusively only Trump, right? Because if the new opposition movement, which I think is so important, is I fear that it's very simple right now to absorb it into the Borg, right? And that in a few years, if what defines Trumpism is kind of the language that he uses and the belligerence, but also the straightforwardness, right, of his language, then that's something very easy to pantomime, right? I mean,
I don't think Trump is this open source insurgency, this thing that's becoming a tribe, a network tribe. Trump isn't really the centerpiece of it. He's a weapon. He's not really a candidate. He's not really a leader in the traditional sense. He's grabbed the baton and he's moving forward with it, but he's being supported because he's moving the insurgency forward. He's keeping that disruption going. As long as he keeps that disruption going, he's going to be supported. If he fails to do that at some point, if they are able to contain him and take him off the board, then we'll see a different player emerge. But it's bigger than Trump.
I see that it's bigger than Trump, and I'll tell you what I think, right? And I was thinking about this last night. I did something with Joseph Cotto on their YouTube thing, and then he and I spoke for like 2 hours afterwards. And I'm going to make sure that Jack Posobiec and Paul Gottfried have a chance to speak, because Paul Gottfried is really an academic on this stuff. So between Posobiec, who has kind of very intimate encounters with Antifa, and has really kind of like that ground view, and Paul Gottfried, who has kind of the conceptual framework and the historical record of it. In addition, so I know Jack does as well, so it's going to be kind of really interesting to see them. But one of the things I was thinking about yesterday is how easy it is to now, even if Trump, I'm going to assume for this that Trump doesn't win. Right. And I still think that the movement to steal the vote is extremely important. So I'm so happy about the steal the vote, because if Trump doesn't win, people will need to attach themselves to something that's an authentic opposition. Because the GOP, we're going to see kind of the reemergence of the Max Boots, who are going to therefore pretend to be kind of the cordial opposition to Biden. We're going to need something that's authentic. But the only way we can determine if it's truly authentic is if we can define what Trumpism is and make sure that what Ali is going to be building, hopefully, has those characteristics.
No, I don't think you're going to be able to define something, what it is. I think it's what it doesn't want to be, what is against. What I found with network tribalism is that these tribes don't form based on what they're for. They form based on what they're against. We have it in the anti-racist. We have it in the anti-fascist. We have it in the anti-colonialist. They have a pattern of behaviors and language that they oppose, and people they oppose, and that they demonize, and that gives them form. That gives them cohesion. A traditional tribe, you form based on what you're for. Why you're better together. The rituals that you go through, the things that you've gone through in the past. There's a positiveness there, but in this environment, I don't think people can actually say agree, about what they're for. I know people tend to focus on what they're against and what's hurting them and what they don't want to see in the future. And on the right, it's going to be focusing more on what is not American. What is against the country. And that'll be their opposition. They can define that. If they can define that, then they become a tribe.
But isn't it very simple then? And this is what I was talking about last night. Isn't it? I think that they're going to wind up mythologizing Trump. I think the conservatives and the liberals, to neutralize his movement, right, and to neutralize the movement, the people that embraced it, like you said, that were not necessarily affixed to Trump, but that attached themselves because he was kind of a weapon, the most powerful weapon against, the elites. So I think that they're going to try very quickly to start mythologizing Trump and start sounding very appreciative of him and, very cordial to him, and start saying things like, Joseph Biden will start, and the whole party Republicans will say, Trump was very right about his treatment of China, but he did make this mistake. And so we're going to do everything that Trump wanted to do, but we're going to make adjustments so that we can really do it. And
that only will happen if he slows down, right? If he has to actually stop, concede, back off, and then they start to be conciliatory. They're starting to ramp up the pressure on him right now. I mean, to kind of initiate the de-Trumpification of the U.S., and that means like all sorts of court cases to go after him personally. And you can see that with the Southern District of New York, and others are going fraud and financial mismanagement, and all this other stuff is coming after him. And then after not only him, but all his associates, all of the people he's done business with, everybody in the administration that's vulnerable to any kind of bureaucratic mishap, and all of that pressure is going to be brought to bear. And the effort will be to get him to concede, to back off, and then they could start the praise. Then they could start to embrace. But I don't think he's necessarily going to back off.
I hope he doesn't. I really don't want him to.
Well, I mean, they have to actually make the deal formal, meaning that we'll back off of these court cases and we'll back off of all this prosecution, and that we'll not go after you in the future if you concede.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Because there's a little bit of a delay. And actually, there's not as much of a delay. I just jumped in. I was very rude.
No, it's fine. No problem.
Because we're friends, and it's a dinner, and I see so many people here with comments and questions, and I really want to make sure that we get to them as well, right? Because people are much more interesting than I am, right? And I want to hurl these at you. I never thought they were going to remove Trump from office, because I thought if they did that, it would allow MAGA and allow the Trump voters, and there's so many of them, and it's such a powerful thing, to really attach themselves to a greater cause, which is kind of the persecution of Trump and the persecution, of the injustice of removing Trump from office. I think would have just mobilized just too many people that the elites wouldn't be able to stop it. It really would have given them something that they would not have been able to fragment. They wouldn't have been able to destroy that. I think it could have overrun them. So I think they kind of were expecting just to trick Trump and use all the levers of bureaucracy to just kind of wait him out. And
right.
Now I think that they're going to I see your point, and it's so important. So I'll get back to my point. I'll jump to your point, and then we'll take some questions. But I see them already being very conciliatory towards Trump. Even in the way they've discussed the coronavirus or the COVID vaccines that are being proposed. And now I see them beginning to be conciliatory in a way that I think that in 5 years, they'll make him a Reagan, or they'll make him a G.W. Bush. I think they'll do it actually quicker on a quicker schedule. And the dangers of that is they'll say things like, if Trump were alive today, he would agree with us with open borders. He just wanted more rules and regulations.
The establishment's going to try to do that, but the left has changed. I mean, there is a huge group of people on the left that will never forgive this. I mean, there's even an industry of Trump is a fascist, and Trump is is trying to conduct a coup here, and he's been trying to do that for years, and those folks will never forgive. They're all for de-Trumpification. And that goes beyond just, taking out him and everyone who worked with him directly. I mean, it's about, purging people from all of the social networking, and then creating those lists and behind the scenes to, get people out of those jobs in the companies that that you work in and they work in. They don't want anyone coming in that who's a Trump supporter or a former Trump supporter who would be disruptive to the workplace.
So you see that, and I see things a little bit differently. So I'm so interested in it. So you see kind of, is it possible that they can decouple the two, that they can mythologize Trump and at the same time go after the Trump supporters? Is that possible to do?
What you're describing is exactly the standard establishment tactic, right? It's like embrace him, and then you smother him, and you bring him, make him part of your pantheon, and he's gone. And I don't think the establishment is that powerful anymore. I don't think they have control over the narrative like they did in the past, and that the left, the tribal left, the network left, is not going to let this go. And that they are going to go after the establishment very, very hard over the next 3-4 years, because they're not going to. The establishment's not going to deliver anything, and just like we saw before. And no, they're not going to let this slide. And there's lots of supporters. I mean, there's lots of supporters throughout government, throughout corporate America, for that tribal left. I mean, they're forcing that alignment, like we're talking, align.
The other thing that I see is that, and this is coming out of my corporate world. So this, I have some good experience with, and then we're going to take everyone's questions because I see so many interesting things, and I'm so eager to get to them. But I see kind of the de-wokeification occurring, and it occurring. I see kind of an American caste system emerging very, very quickly, and I think part of that was Obamacare really initiated it, and the people who very aggressively pushed for Obamacare, the younger people, I think of them as anti-consequentialist,
right?
Because they should have seen that detethering healthcare from employment created these things that were, for me, very foreseeable, because I know the industry like the back of my hand, but for them, just too much intricacy. Like their own internal contemplation didn't anticipate that it would allow corporations to tether the relationship, to completely tether their relationship. And now we're having this caste system where we'll have W-2s, which are the Amazon nobles, right? They're going to displace, I think they're going to displace DCers. And then you're going to have the 1099s, which 90% of them will be of the pleb class. So I think that corporations are going to be unwilling to take on those W-2s who are social activists, because it introduces too much risk, headline risk, and also the possibility of legislative risk. So I think the way they're going to keep distance from these people is to just not bring them in, and it's kind of their the de-wokeification.
No, I've seen some signs of it. Even NPR just yesterday was running a negative piece on the protests in Portland and Seattle, and saying that there were, it's slipped into extremism. It's like, they've gone too far. They're extremists, which, a month ago they never would have said anything like that. So yeah, the establishment is trying to close things down to get back into, bring things back into the center again, or whatever that is, into the establishment zone. And but I don't think they're going to be successful. I just don't. Any more than the Republican establishment was successful in terms of keeping that populism, that red insurgency from taking over the party back in 2016.
So what do you foresee? And then I see such interesting stuff, and I want to go to what Ken Thoreau just commented. So what do you anticipate then? Let's assume that Trump, I think this, I always wonder, right? And I've been wondering it for 3 years. I thought it would go exactly as it's going. My question has always been, who does justice, who employs justice? Like who does justice work for? And I thought justice would work against Trump, and they would demobilize any opportunities to protest, the injustice of it. But then, if Trump retains office, then that's something, and that's a little bit more predictable, I suppose. But if Trump doesn't retain office, what do you think happens next? And let me include within that what Ali is doing, because I don't really see a lot of opposition other than the presence of opposition other than what some of these people are doing. So what do you see happening next?
Okay, well, Trump is going to try to keep things going, and what they'll do is they'll start the de-Trumpification process. They'll tie him up in court and go after everybody like I was talking about, and then they would start to disconnect and purge out all the pro-Trump accounts out of social networking, and they start to disappear like winking out. And then they'll disconnect Trump, and I don't even know. I mean, if he's going to make it past January 21, and on Twitter and in other places, and the news media will stop carrying any story or even covering them at all. At least anyone but Fox and the others, the smaller networks, and so he'll be frozen out, disconnected to the extent possible, and that anyone who is in support of him will start to feel the pressure and feel that disconnection. If you do anything online, like we do almost everything online, nowadays. Much more. I mean, the online world, what's connected to the network, is much more important to my daily life than anything the federal government does. If they start to disconnect you just for being connected to Trump and Trumpism, that could shrink the movement because it relies to a large extent on the connectivity, and it relies on the.
So do you think that they have to? And then I want to get to the.
I think they're going to. And if the movement continues to show life, and it is. Yeah. I mean, Trump figured out how to do that by attacking those flaws or hacking those flaws in the election system.
So
and just the third thing was beyond just the fact that the process wasn't done the night of the election, which because that the way the media calls it, and that the data is crappy. The third thing was that the moment he did it, he had huge amounts of opposition, and everyone was calling anyone who supported Trump, a fascist and a coup monger or whatever, and that of course gets people immediately back into the defense of him and what he's doing, and so he played that perfectly, and that's going to go on forever. I don't know if necessarily see that ending, even after he leaves the White House.
So you think there will be an authentic continuation? Because there's certainly going to be an inauthentic one, right? The people that are impressed, Josh Hawley, I like these guys, or Jim Jordan, but I'm also very unimpressed with them. I think Hawley is intellectual. I think Jordan is somewhat of an intellectual, but I never really thought of them as willing to risk their careers and risk the blackmail that DC is really good at for Trump. And I don't think that what comes next will include them if it's authentic. And if it's inauthentic, I think they'll be at the front of the line. Them and their PACs will be the grifters.
Yeah. If it's inauthentic, they'll just be toll takers, right? So because they know it's not going to have any real purchase, right? But if it's authentic, they can't risk the kind of double barrel attack government and the network left attacking them, both internally and externally in those companies. They're going to, those big tech giants are going to fold. They're going to align. And when they align, up come the AI censors and they get down. I mean, the difference in censorship between now and what we saw in the post-World War II environment is AIs. I mean, and that those AIs can censor you down to the conversational level, not just the big media giants and not just the online networks. It can actually censor your personal conversations and monitor them en masse, all 3.5 billion of us at the same time in real time, and intercept things before they even get uploaded. That's a level of censorship and control that we've never seen in history. And, it's the thing that we're flirting with right now, and we're doing it in a bad way. I mean, I think the way out of this is maybe to get a digital bill of rights going. And I mean, where we have protections against the government, against the network, in the same way we have protections against the state.
So I'll tell you, it's a really interesting point, and then I'm going to get to the questions, because you bring up such an interesting thing, which is one of the reasons I think, and I've referenced Ali a lot, and I know that there's other people involved, and I'm not, I'm not necessarily doing that in just an admiration, but I'm really doing it because of the importance, I think, of creating an opposition to the opposition type of movement that normal people can attach themselves to, right? Because there's a lot of people who are really pissed. I know a lot of Muslims who voted for Trump, a lot of Hispanic. I know more Muslims have voted for Trump than who voted for Biden. And I know a lot of Muslims. I know a lot of immigrants, a lot. Nevertheless, so one of the reasons I think it's important is because the only lever that plebs, and I kind of include myself in that, and I kind of don't, so I'm in a kind of an unusual position, but that plebs are going to be able, the only lever that plebs are going to have to be able to mediate with the elites, right? Because they're not going to have the political structure anymore. Clearly, that's out the window. So the only lever they're going to have to mediate kind of a peace agreement with the elites is these type of organizations, because these AIs and robots, the elites themselves right now appear to be very insecure, and they're very unwise, and they're really not the elites of old. They're not very sophisticated, they're not intelligent, they're not well read, they're very insecure, they're very unwise. And I think that people can negotiate a peace agreement, right? The social contract with the elites that would stop them from building up robots to replace a lot of humans. I'm a big fan.
Sure. There's two ways to do that. It's one, to recognize that we need a ownership of our data. We need certain protections. We don't need privacy. Privacy is just like this philosophical argument that never ends. Real ownership, everything that's recorded on you, you own until you sell it or lease it or whatever. And then the second thing is we have to recognize that this social network that we're all part of across all these different platforms, that's an actual social decision-making system on par with what we see in markets and what we see in bureaucracies and the like. And then we have to ensure that it works. And it right now it has the consensus and a dissent dynamic, and both have to be vital. Consensus can mobilize a lot of resources. It can be done on the right or the left and get things done very, very quickly by getting everybody on board to get it done. But you need that dissent to be able to slow it down from becoming total. And when it exceeds its shelf life, the dissent needs to be able to take it out. And if you shut down the dissent and say you can't say anything negative about this, and we're going to censor you out, that's nuts. Personally, like a good kind of canary in the coal mine on this is like the flat earthers and people like that, the anti-vaxxers. I don't see them as a threat. I like the idea that there are lots of different ideas out there, and that they exist and people are able to think them, and they are in our tool set if we need them for dissent and maybe even a consensus in the future. And that you need all of that diversity of thinking in order to be functional. But if you wipe it all out and you become one thought on this issue and one way of doing things, that's the end.
So I'll tell you,
that's the end of innovation. That's the end of everything that we do.
I'll tell you what I think, and then we're really going to get into these questions. And I so much appreciate everybody's time and everybody for being here. And I really want to go through your questions and your comments. I'm so fascinated. I'm also fascinated if people want to contribute their definitions of Trumpism and some of the other terms that we've used, because I know we've given examples of Trumpism, but I think some of them fail in kind of the one and only type of properties of what Trumpism is. I'm really curious what people have to say about it. And I want to discuss Antifa. I'm so fascinated by Antifa. It's not going away. No matter what happens next, it's not going away. But so
it's a tribe. Yeah, it's there. Network tribe. It's there.
I'll tell you the way I see the future is I think that our elites, the tech elites, have some degree of Asperger's. They're not empathetic. They don't understand people. They've never failed before, so they're not humble. And they're looking at humanity as a failed business model. And they want to cut staff, and I think as soon as there's some way of disposing of the staff that they want to get rid of, they would do it. But again, I think that they look at humanity as a flawed business model, and it's just the way their mind works. I think they're nihilist. I don't think they've attached themselves to any concept of a higher authority other than themselves. And I think they've kind of envisioned themselves now as a god in their algorithms, a scripture. So I think that we need some way of mediating with them so we can all kind of live, because the social contract used to be
Yeah.
your taxes, but just keep my house safe and don't get me beaten up, and I'll pay taxes.
Well, I mean, technology elites, people who are using technology to kind of improve our society, improve us, been around in the U.S. experience. I mean, it's one of the things that was unique about the United States is that we were always constantly trying to improve ourselves and make ourselves better. And we were willing to use technology in order to do that. I mean, you think of the way that Ford was, the way he priced his vehicle, and the way he even built it, right? He wanted to make sure that anyone who's caught on a farm can get out and drive and see the world and do things. And, he made it repairable. He cut the price in half. I mean, it was about transformation. The same thing about like phones, putting phones in everyone's houses in the 20s and the 30s. Whereas like if you were in the UK, they only put it in the post office because they thought nobody else wants it in their homes. We would put it, it's this, but we've lost a lot of that now that these tech elites have begun globe standing. They're not thinking in terms of trying to improve our lives per se. They're thinking in terms of extraction. They're thinking of, throwing little nice to have tools and nothing about trying to make us better off and better.
Yeah.
It's just that drive to improvement, that drive to create that better society is not there.
Yeah.
Because you can see that it goes all the way back into the kind of, Max Faber's, what?
May I, because it's a friendly dinner, right? And there's so many people. Would you mind if I raise my hand, right? And and I'll order some more fries or whatever I'm going to order. So I want to get to some of the questions. And Jack knows I'm so fascinated by Antifa, and we were discussing it while he was engaged with that type of stuff. We were discussing it because I was very interested in the type of communications devices they were using, the amount of Chinese Communist Party infiltration of these movements, which is a real problem. Chaz, Raz, the warlord of Chaz, was definitely not just a provocateur; he was an agent. So I'm agent of hostile powers. So I'm really curious. So Jack, everybody here, I've put up Jack's movie, which is antifamovie.com. I'm going to see it, and I'm really eager about it. Yeah, I'm really fascinated by it, and I'm really. I hope everyone will see it, because I'm really then looking forward to that conversation with Jack where we can all kind of discuss it, because there's just so many questions about it, about how to, again, negotiate with that social movement, right? And how we can slow it or stop it, or what happens next with it, how we can mediate that, because it's not going away. And it's clearly being used as the phalanx for the elites. And not only that, but they've been given kind of like the franchise on violence, right? So the violence has been deregulated. They've been given that franchise. So I want to discuss that with Jack, and how much they use kind of the industrial activist complex machinery. I'm very interested in that. So I hope everyone will get a chance to watch that. And I want to thank Jack also for being here. And I think since I started following Jack around 2015, it's been remarkable watching his career. So I'm very excited about it. And he's got the comic book also. So I think that's pretty cool. And now we're going to get to people's questions. So Ken Thoreau, thank you so much for being here. He says it's as if there's a playbook. John, do you feel for the last 4 years that there has been a playbook that against Trump?
Well, the establishment playbook didn't work at all. So the standard, impeachment process, I could see that from a mile away. Trump's support, at least in the polls, was steady at 42% throughout the whole process. And it was based on a fundamental misunderstanding about, the way in which Trump was elected and how he's supported. The establishment didn't really have a playbook. There's because that implies that there's lots of elites out there doing the planning. And I've seen the elite processes, how they think and how they plan. No one's that tuned in. They're not that savvy in that regard. They participate, but this thing is on its own. It's got its own dynamic. And this open source dynamic is a different thing entirely, and it doesn't. It's not conducive to leadership. And it drones out. Excuse me.
Can it be turned off?
I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, I think this is a inevitable process. I mean, because of the way the technology is changing us, and it's already changed us. I mean, just like once the printing press started that change and rewired our brains, it started us thinking in terms of literary kind of mindset. Everything changed. I mean, feudalism was on its way out, and bureaucracy was on its way in, and democracy and pamphleteering, was everywhere. And the church changed, and we saw everything in motion. And we're seeing the same thing now with social networking changing the way we think.
Yeah,
and organize.
Thank you so much for that. And Logan Hops is here, and thank you so much for Logan. I don't see a picture there, so I'll just kind of imagine a picture because Logan Hops. I'm going to think of.
Don't confuse the fact that there's not an overarching plan. There's not kind of masterminds behind the scenes pulling the strings. I mean, there's not, but there's lots of people organizing, but they're part of something larger. And you can have a group that's doing all sorts of planning and groups that are doing planning, and they can. Well, I mean, if anyone wrote the playbook, it's probably me.
Yeah. So
for open source insurgencies, it's probably me. But so it's like.
So Logan Hops, thank you so much for being here. Says there is organizing, and I would imagine that they would be referring to the organizing of the opposition, because we also all realize that there's going to be that disingenuous, something that resembles Trump faction of the GOP. I mean, it's very clear that it's just going to be hideous. It's frightening to imagine that. So there is organizing, and thank you so much for saying that. And Passion Fruit A. Has posted here is the evidence.com, which is crowdsourced. I think it's kind of schematics of voting fraud and Dominion fraud. All of this has been documented for many years. I know a lot of ethical hackers that have been talking about the equipment for many, many years, and I know a lot of unethical hackers too. And I'm glad that they're, that it's being pursued. I personally don't think it's going to be effective to unfortunately, to have Trump keep office, because I don't believe in justice, and I don't believe in the power of language. I think the power of result is much more powerful than that of language, and but I think that that's important for the historical record. I think the historical record will require some look back onto the voting fraud. John, what do you think?
I don't think he's going to retain office.
Well, what do you think about here is the evidence, which is kind of this collaborative.
I think that's classic open source. It's great. I mean, it's part of the process, and it sprung up on its own, and people are contributing to it, and it's par for the course for the the insurgency. It's been doing that all along, and that's the kind of evidence that this is going to continue. It's what's going on the right is not just going to end with this election. Is going to continue. And it's going to focus on other things to go after.
Even with kind of a malicious Kamala Harris, there's nothing they can do to squash this.
Well, I mean, the disruption is possible, and there's lots of ways that disruption can come about, and that to a certain extent there's a race, right, between the right and the left on this. The left the tribal left to kind of align everything, to shut everything down, to de-Trumpify, and with the establishment helping them out and participating in that, and then the right to try to keep things open and wait till the next election.
We're going to continue. We're going to continue on. So Prime Cut Rat, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, John, but I did kind of. I got to be honest with you.
No problem.
Because it's a dinner with friends, right? So Prime Cut Rat, and thank you so much for being here, says back in Egypt, Google and Facebook engineers actively helped build the altnets. John?
Oh yeah. No, I mean, the beautiful thing about kind of this tribalization, this open source insurgency, you can reach inside bureaucracies. They can flip people inside of agencies. It can flip people inside of companies, and then you can have employees working for the insurgency or working for the protest, and that it doesn't have a clear organizational boundary, right? So
So we're gonna continue. I'm gonna give you a bell, right? Because I do a lot of my investor stories, and I need it's like a Family Feud thing at the end where you got to buzz in quickly, right? It's like a Jeopardy type of thing. So CB us US Mom, thank you so much for being here. Says we are in a world war against the NWO. New World Order, and don't realize it. John, what do you think? Are we in a war against the?
Like McLuhan says, like I say, he said it back in 1960. Said that this is World War III is a global information war, and we're all participants. There's no dividing line between the military and the civilians. Is that everyone's been drafted, whether you like it or not, and you either participate or you don't. But whoever wins this wins it all, wins the whole caboodle. Not only here, but it'll keep on going until it takes over everything. So you either participate in this and help build the world that's going to come, or you sit back.
Yeah, and so what I'm trying to do, and I think a lot of people know, is I'm keeping a log. So I think of this as my Peloponnesian War, and I'm its Thucydides, which I've got vanity too. So I'm also a little bit of Alcibiades. So here is Generator 16, who I know offline as well, says, can we trade our Antifa for Hong Kong's pro-democracy protesters?
No.
But they do bring up a really good point, because the Hong Kong pro-democracy protesters are an open source movement in themselves.
Oh no, they were open source. Yeah, most definitely. I mean, but using the same organizational technique. But they were focused on a different enemy and different time, and now they're getting crushed. Right? Now they're getting arrested and eradicated. Slowly but surely.
It's going to be very bad, and people don't realize that.
That's a dissent versus. See, in that case, the Hong Kong protesters were dissent, and the Chinese government was consensus, and it got every single Hong Kong business to align and flip, and it started going after every individual who wants to do business and do well in the world. And you have to bend a knee, and they did, and slowly but surely, we'll see it all align in Hong Kong.
So we're going to continue. So Jack also says, and I don't know the history too well. So John, if you do, please tell me what it is.
Yeah, right? It was that. I mean, it was anti-SDP. It was the kind of center-left party.
Jack Posobiec says Antifa was anti-SDP. So from there, John, could you give me some? Can you backfill? Because I don't know any of this.
Yeah. Well, this is what we're talking about earlier. Was that the Antifa back then was anti. The left parties that were competitive with them. Okay, so they were focused on, the Antifa was a Stalinist militia back in Germany in the 30s, and they were focused instead of on the brown shirts and the steel helmets and all the other militias which were on the right. They were focused on the parties of the left to try to get them in line. And so if that parallel holds today, we'll see the Antifa and the anti-racists and the anti-colonialists and all the network tribes on the left start attacking the Democratic Party and try to get it aligned, try to get it flipped while the right does what it does and it grows in isolation. And if that occurs, that gives the breathing room for the right.
Wow, really interesting. So No Worries 2020, who's my second favorite salesperson in the whole world, because we've discussed it during some of my sales periscopes. I'm so interested in so many things, and sales has been so good for me through my life, and it allowed me to do things I wanted to do. So No Worries 2020 says current Antifa just borrowed that past as branding. I discussed that a little bit yesterday with Paul Gottfried, who's an academic on it, and I'm looking forward to that conversation with Jack Posobiec as well.
What did he say?
Well, my question to Paul Gottfried was why we never hear about Mao, right? And we never hear about Stalin or Lenin, and they killed far more people. So why does Antifa, why does this social movement and the AOC malarkey, right? However it could be said, why do they cherish, Stalin? Why do they cherish this kind of communism? And he felt part of it was that they really like the idea of, in their minds, they think that the prison system and you can remove people and put them into this kind of educative type of environment, And so if they're not good citizens by their definition, you throw them into a gulag, and in their fantasy, it's a very educative type of place where they can just be kind of instructed on how to become better citizens in their left world.
Yeah, I don't think you can say that there's any one ideology in what people are for inside of the Antifa, right? I know what they're against. I know that they are focused on fighting that, but you can't like say they have a cohesive ideology behind the scenes of what they're for. What they adhere to. It's all over the map. I mean, it is a dog's breakfast, and the same thing, and to a certain extent on the right is like, yeah, it's a dog's breakfast. I mean, people believe a lot of different things, but they know what they don't like and what they're fighting against. And that's just the way that these movements work. It just it's what guaranteed that Trump would be supported. Is that the open source movement formed around the idea of sending him to Washington to disrupt stuff, and that everything else about him that could worry people or disrupt, make people angry, was forgotten, was overlooked. So even when the Access Hollywood tapes came in, it's like people weren't electing him as a candidate; they were electing him as a weapon to send to Washington.
Do you feel, and I'm asking this of everybody else also because I'm very interested, so people, please tell me what you think. Do you feel that in that 4 years, and I know that Trump was under constant assault and there was a fusillade. I mean, we all observed it, right? I mean, it's impossible to be intellectually honest and not kind of observe the fusillade that was cast on him by everything. Right? It was just absurd in American history and world history. It's kind of absurd. But so do you feel in that 4 years that he kind of did disrupt it enough, or do you feel that once in office, he started embracing he turned it, and he started embracing being the establishment guy?
So you're thinking in terms of disruption as passing legislation or doing things, in the traditional way, right? But he was disruptive throughout the entire process. That throughout the entire 4 years, that's all he really delivered. Was, from the perspective of being, this anti-establishment insurgency, it's that he stopped the establishment from continuing to cinch down the vice, right? To make things worse. And to that extent that you could say that he was successful in that. He disrupted it. He prevented it from advancing. In terms of, notable legislation and the like, I don't think that's the measure. That would be the measure for establishment win, but it's not a measure for what we're seeing.
That's remarkable, and I'm going to. I always replay these things a couple of times afterwards, and that's something I'm going to ponder. Because right now I'm kind of looking at the questions, so I don't have a kind of full focus.
Well, think about it. Sliding deeper and deeper into an embrace by China, right? Sliding deeper and deeper into the anti-racist, anti-fascist, anti-whatever, creeping into corporations and alignment. And trying to keep that at bay, and the kind of controls that we'd see on social networking in terms of censorship and what's approved and what's not. That didn't cinch down like it would have otherwise, I think. And that more foreign wars, the endless wars. I mean, that was slowed down. I mean, he just didn't get involved. He didn't do it.
I'll tell you, and then we're going to go to some other questions. But Trump was also an expression of a wage earner revolt, right? Of a taxpayer revolt, wage earner revolt, and also a lot of anti-war exhaustion and people who are just very upset with Obama because he was kind of he presented himself as an anti-war, and then he was kind of exactly opposite. So I think for a lot of people, it was just war exhaustion and exhaustion of lies. And I am happy that he, didn't get us involved in anymore, because I think Hillary would have had us. I think Hillary would have had us bombing Canada by now.
Well, I mean, just par for the course for the establishment, right? It's just more and more involvement, and it went off in the wrong direction, going into the Middle East in the very time when we didn't need that oil.
Yeah, well,
it's a total mistake.
You're an expert on that. So I want to just go to what Ken said really quickly, and it also gives me a chance to look at the other questions. So this is all yours, John. So it says the modern leftists that I know decided to ride with Biden instead of protest, like in 2016.
Yeah, no, they rode in with Biden. They, though there were the protests, and the protests to a large extent contributed to Trump's performance in the election. I mean, even though people won't in the media won't directly tie the two. I mean, destroying tens of thousands of businesses is a pretty sure way of getting a big turnout in an election for the people who are against it. But the AOC, she sat back, and now she's back. She's starting to throw stones all over the place. I mean, she's hitting people, she's saying that they're stupid about their campaigns, that why they lost those House seats, and they didn't know what they were doing, and now she's unshackled as far as she's concerned.
Well, so Carla,
we'll see her a lot more.
So Carla N Vegas said the AOC chant was the cringiest thing. I didn't see it. I don't even have cable TV at any of my spots, so I don't really watch the news. But I'll take your word for it, because it's not too hard for me to imagine it in my head. Right? I can actually see it in front of me. But it's something that's interesting, because John has a blog, and he'll introduce himself at the end. And he's been writing about. He wrote in his blog, and I was one of the first subscribers to Patreon that I know of. And he wrote in his blog that if you think Maxine Waters is bad, wait till you see what's coming down the road. And you are so right, because they're just getting crazier and crazier, and more belligerent, and more kind of disconnected from both their electorate, and almost from reality. Doesn't matter anymore to them. I mean, it's interesting to watch how disconnected from reality some of them are, and they're it's just what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts, Sean?
No, it's a tribalization process. We're seeing network tribes form on the left, and they really took off when COVID hit. I think it was the existential threat that they perceived from COVID really crystallized their thinking on this, and they spread. The kind of their depiction of Trump as a fascist really became mainstream. I mean, I'm seeing mainstream establishment people use that as a throwaway term. Trump is a fascist, and the people who support him are fascists.
So, Carla,
let
me see what Carla's continuation of her question is, because I'm asking you about it. So I would imagine she's still asking about AOC. And Carla N Vegas says she's trying to be a disruptor. Is it possible for her now, for her to be a disruptor, or is the best she can accomplish to catch up with Antifa and the rest of them?
I think she stepped back for the election, and now she's stepping forward again, and we'll see. I mean, we'll see if she's able to keep up, do what she did a couple of years ago, and that she's going to have to become much more visible in order to pull that off.
So thank you so much. So Danger Will Rob 10. I like the hat. It's the people can't see the picture of his hat, but it's like the hat from Breaking Bad. Whatever you call that type of hat, whatever that character was, I like the hat. So Danger Will Rob 10 says, "You're wrong. It's not over." And I suppose you're referring to Trump. And I don't want it to be over. I mean, whether I'm a Democrat or liberal, which I'm a New York kind of liberal, I guess. But I don't want it to be over, because I think there's always got to be somebody. There's always got to be inquiry into truth. And one of the things that I like about this movement to stop the steal, and I think they're really, in a way, I think it's so helpful, because I don't think there's much they're demanding. They're much too smart to demand answers. They're still at the point where they're really articulating their questions. And I think that's very important, because most people will just, not know how to ask the right questions. And that allows for the wrong questions, for answers that are untruthful. And it allows for, I guess, maybe words. How would I describe it? Maybe like if you ask the wrong questions, you're going to get, the response is going to be kind of like words used in the same way that a squid uses ink. So I like it, because they're very focused on asking the right questions. I think that's important. So I don't want it to be over. So you're saying it's wrong. It's still not over. I agree that it's not over. I think it's going to be difficult for Trump because the advantage that they have, the Biden side has, is complexity. They have the advantage of a very complex system that most people can't really grasp, the complexification of it, and they have the advantage of time. So Crypt Knight says the left doesn't even support Antifa. That was a lie to get voters. John, does the left support Antifa?
The establishment left? No.
Does the left support Antifa, or is that kind of a Homeric type of mythology that's just been created?
I mean, okay, so the establishment certainly doesn't, but they put up with them. Yeah, and the establishment left, if you want to characterize it that way.
AOC the establishment left?
Excuse me?
Is AOC the establishment left?
No, she's trying to go out and pick up the open source elements, the tribal elements, kind of put them under a banner and lead them forward. And it's big. I mean, it skews young. It's large. It's networked. It's a lot more aggressive than the party and than the establishment. And it's already made a lot of inroads in the last year in terms of setting the language and setting the tone, setting the mindset among a huge portion of the establishment. And so it's Antifa is just one element of it. There's the anti-racist too, and there's the anti-colonialists, and there's a whole slew of tribes, network tribes that have stood up, and they know what they're against, and what they're against is growing in clarity and definition and sprawling into more and more areas, and more companies and organizations are signing on to it.
And we're going to continue, but because I see some really good questions here, and I so much value everyone's time. It's a kind of a dinner with friends. Did you see that picture of the Antifa guy and Jack in confrontation? Did you ever see that picture?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
it's a really good picture because the Antifa person has all the anonymity. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
While as Jack doesn't, so they're in full armor versus Jack. So it's a really interesting picture. I mean, there's just so much in that picture. You know how that picture where that propagandists always use, where they'll have like a bunch of soldiers with their rifles, and then they'll have some woman, some very elegant looking timid woman with her finger, like giving them a flower, or with her finger into the barrel. It was the exact opposite of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, if you're watching both streams, like on the right and the left at the same time, they all have this imagery. They all have these empathic triggers that are generating tribal loyalty, and those things are going out. Those videos and those pictures, and people are being triggered empathically, and becoming tribal as a result. And
are people going to look at that picture? I look at it as a kind of a normal person, and I say, here's Jack, who's just he presents himself very pleasantly.
Sure,
very pleasantly. His appearance is very good, and so he kind of looks like we all kind of do, right? And I see somebody who's got all the anonymity, who looks like kind of this futuristic infantryman. And I think automatically that guy's a crackpot, and this is not a good situation.
Oh, sure. I mean, look, these empathy isn't a voluntary thing; it's an automatic thing. It's involuntary. It happens to you, and when you're connected, or when you're triggered by it, it models the victim's mind, or the person you're having empathy with, on your own, and it's a vast transfer of information. So when you saw the George Floyd video, that was an involuntary empathic episode, and you were connected, and you felt the knee on your neck, and you got mad at the police. And then when you saw the early videos of, say, Kyle Rittenhouse, where he's like saying, the rosy-faced young guy sitting out there saying, I'm here because I want to defend this property, and then to see him mobbed and attacked, or seeing those people who went to the DC protest and the MAGA protest, where they were walking back and being attacked in the street. Or if you're on the other side of that same protest, you saw the Proud Boys out there, beating at people in other videos, right? So that was another kind of empathic triggering moment. And again, whether you're cognizant whether you want to or not, you're triggered by that, right?
So my question is a lot of people's questions, and I just rang the bell, right? I
Yeah.
buzzed before you did. So, but my question is, are some people looking at that confrontation and siding with the military appearing guy? I mean, do they think of that person as heroic?
Well, they have plenty of pictures of the opposite, right? So they don't even see a lot of the stuff that triggers the right. I mean, they just kind of gloss it over. It just goes by. I mean, it allows you to manufacture this stuff too. So, you have all these incidents like of anger that are staged, right? And hate, and then that it washes over everybody, and everyone's triggered, and everyone's like, it has this, empathic, connection. And then it's proven false, but who cares at that point? It's an example of this larger pattern of activity, this larger idea that you're signing on to because you believe it now. This is an example of it's tangible, it's real. And the people who are fighting against it are all like me. We see the same thing, and we have to fight it. We have to fight that. And that's tribalism in the purest sense.
Yeah, and thank you. It's really interesting, and I'm keeping a history of this. I look at both sides, and I, see a lot of what Scott Adams says, because he's very good on kind of the rhetoric, the persuasiveness of it. I guess he's an expert on, and I still think about the interview that Jack Murphy did with Alexander Dugin, where Alexander Dugin summed it up really elegantly. It would have taken me like an hour. It takes me an hour to say these simple things. He said, if there's no truth, then there's no lies. I thought that was really interesting. And Jack has really been remarkable. So over the last 3 years, I've really watched him mature so much.
Well, there's no facts. So in a tribal environment, you need tribalism in order to have established facts. You need a tribal bond to assume when somebody gives you reports on an incident or gives you a fact, you have to have a tribal connection to them to make the assumption that they're giving you truth, right? That you can believe their facts. But if they're in the other tribe, anything they present is seen as an attack, as something to undermine you. You can't understand anything that or you don't believe anything that they're providing you as facts. And without facts, there's no coherence, and there's no social decision making that can go forward from there.
So, and thank you very much for that, John. So I'm going to have difficulty with this name. It's so. Pardon me, and I also have a little bit of a lisp, so that's going to make it even a little bit more difficult for me. But Mu Ahab, thank you so much for being here, says, if Trump wins, I'm sorry, John, I think that was your microphone, says, Mu Ahab, thank you for being here, says, if Trump wins, what would happen to social networks such as YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter? John?
Efforts to kind of cinch down the censorship would slow, but pretty much nothing else. They'd be allowed to continue their business under the agreement that they don't cinch down on stuff. They don't start kicking people off. They don't purge. They slow the purge.
So if Trump wins, if Trump retains his seat, do they slow the purge, or
I don't think there's any effort to do anything beyond that. I mean, people talk about breaking them up and stuff, but frankly, why would you break up like Facebook? I mean, in the sense that it has 3.5 billion people. It's like, it surrounds China, right? From a geostrategic perspective, we are getting data. If it's nominally an American company, that China is not getting.
Yeah, so I'm going to be doing a discussion with Matt Stoller, and I'm going to wait till after the election resolves itself, for a couple of reasons. Because then we've got to look at kind of how these things go legislatively, and he's of the opinion that monopoly should always be broken up. And I'm of the opinion that we need monopolies because we need companies that are hoarding cash because innovation is so expensive, and they've got to smooth the volatility. But I don't see any way that any genuine effort to stop or slow down Facebook, Google, or any of them.
Look at it this way. I mean, all of that. Okay. Almost every product and service that we're going to build in the next 20, 30 years will include AIs, right? And AIs require data, vast amounts of data. The more data, there's a high correlation between the quality of the AI and the amount of data that you get. It's almost a straight line up. And the bulk of the data that you're getting right now on human behavior and thinking and language use and everything else is all found on these social networks. And we're getting it for all the countries around the world. And except for China, right? And China hasn't been able to expand beyond their borders, and they're not able to get all of that nuanced data on how all the rest of the world thinks and acts and can't build those AIs and can't put it into their products, and they will suffer as a result of that. And that's the ultimate containment there. And if we break it up and allow Chinese companies to start buying them and start to take advantage of the weakness that presented on that, then it's ultimately damaging to us. So I don't know. I mean, you can break them up, but that's based on a 20th century mindset. It's not based on where we're at right now.
I actually bought Facebook stock after Cambridge Analytica, during Cambridge Analytica, because I knew that would be an opportunity for Facebook to purge themselves of a lot of developers and APIs and bring that all in-house, and for them to recapture all of that revenue. And it worked out. And now I expected them to fire everybody last year, and that worked out too. So it is interesting. So Ask Bill Ball says, guys, please stop posting what you might do, not only if you truly intend to take action if the Chinese Communist Party wins. And it looks like Bill is saying that to other people who are on it, but I wanted to present that. Danger Will Robb continues. He's the one with the good hat. If people can't see it, there won't be a Biden presidency. That's an unknown, right? So we're dealing with the known unknowns, and we all need to fear the unknown unknowns. So Generator 16 says to me, actually, wait, I thought you updated your prediction the night before. This is true. So let me say what happened. In May, I said that Biden was going to win in a landslide. He was going to be an FDR 2.0. He was going to re-enter TPP. He was going to re-enter WTO. He was going to re-engage with World Health Organization, which is a criminal enterprise. And I promised myself that I wouldn't look again until right before the election, because I didn't want to go on that roller coaster that particularly the conservatives were thrilled with participating on the thrills of the roller coaster, which I don't like. So the night before, it seemed like Trump had a lot of momentum. John and I also DM'd about that. And, Trump was remarkable. He really drove turnout in such a way that I don't think the political machines could write ballots quickly enough to stop him. He just turned out people. He activated people. I think one of the mistakes that Biden made is they kept on posing in masks. And I think it was such an ominous sign, a foreboding sign of a future, that it terrified the crap out of people to see Kamala wearing some type of a fashionable type of mask with Biden, even though there was nobody within 100 feet of her. I mean, it was absolutely insane. And there were a couple of kind of cues like that I think Trump just really pounced on. And I'm sure John has his own feelings on it, but I thought that he was, the night before I said, he's going to turn out so many people that even they're a corrupt machine, a local kind of fragmented party by party machine, because it's very fragmented the way these things work, won't be able to turn out enough ballots to stop them. And sure enough, it took them a couple of days to be able to fill out all those ballots to stop them, because it's, there is fraud. There's no doubt about it to me. It's will the fraud be prosecuted now, or will there just be kind of a Lindsey Graham letter going out in 3 months saying that he wants to investigate it further and form a committee so that this doesn't happen again? John, what are your thoughts? You and I discussed that.
No, I mean, I thought it was going to be a close Biden victory, because I mean, it was going to be rigged that way, and it, you have to assume that both parties, and it's always been the case, that they're working hard to rig the election. It just happens. It's cheating. Everybody cheats, to the extent they can get away with it. There's a lot of slop in this system, and a lot of exploits that could be taken advantage of, and they are. And it really comes out. You only really truly see it when you see this kind of recount and the real pressure on trying to get the visibility up. And then you start to look at the data, and things are problematic. You know what? It pretty much ended up kind of like I thought, in terms of the closeness.
You and I both.
Last minute search.
You and I both did. We were DMing saying, the conservatives think that they don't understand how the apparatus has for the last 4 years has
That's all they've been spending time on, is figuring out how are we gonna make sure that this election. I mean, you could see it in the way the media treated Biden. They didn't even ask him the question.
And they still, have you noticed? I'm sure everybody has, how now I'm seeing all this imagery of Obama, very worshipful, of Biden, of Harris, and there's just the thing that I think a lot of people who voted for Trump really liked is that they knew that if they voted for Hillary, there would never be, she would just get carte blanche to do whatever she wanted to do, and there would never be any investigations. There would never be anything. She could just bomb Canada, and the media would celebrate her for it. So the thing
I don't know. I don't know if that. I mean, no. They would have like hit her. I mean, they hit her during the 2016 campaign. They went after her, and they probably would have done it during the. I mean, they would have done what they do, but this was singular the way they treated Biden and Harris. I mean, nothing negative, no investigation,
and it's going to be
absolutely
like
zero, and it's going to be the same way throughout the entire presidency until or to the extent that they think that Trump's not a menace anymore, but he's going to and the right isn't a menace, and it's going to be a menace, right? It's going to be there, and they won't cover it. They won't put any pressure on it.
We're going to continue to the next question because it kind of there's continuity to what you just said. So D Blockade 871 in. Thank you so much for being here. You need to have a picture. I like looking at the pictures, particularly if it's like of a puppy or something. So D Blockade 871 in says Trump will win either way. Half the country will follow Trump, others will follow Joe, but Trump will win, I suppose. So they're saying that either way, Trump wins because even if he doesn't retain presidency, he's still going to have a very vibrant movement. John, what do you think?
Oh, I mean, I think the right's going to be there. I mean, it's going to continue to tribalize, and Trump will be a central participant in that. And then the left will continue to tribalize, and Biden will be caught in the center and be attacked from all sides, from the left and from the right. And he's not on the network. He didn't. I mean, they turned off Twitter, for God's sakes. They didn't do anything online, and it's gonna be like they're gonna be blindsided by these attacks constantly, and disruptions, and it'll be in the street, it'll be online, it will be staged events and things like that will constantly derail the presidency. It's inevitable. So
we're going to continue on. So Axel Rohr, I get to defend myself sometimes too, right? So says, LOL. Adam admits there is voter fraud and yet is not in the least bit alarmed by it and maintains, whatever they say, D spot, maintains the spot. So I am alarmed by it. I'm very alarmed by it. And again, like I said, I'm glad that Ali's got Stop the Steal and some of the other people. I think Nick Fuentes is doing it now and a few others. And these are people that I don't necessarily I don't even find myself in agreement with much. But I'm just appreciative of what they're doing because they're asking good questions, and you can't get good answers unless you ask good questions. And I like also that they're asking it kind of the interrogatories are broken down into very little pieces, so they know that they can't just say, "Hey, was there fraud?" Right? They know that they've got to piecemeal it into very little, kind of Socratic. One question builds on another question, builds on another question. So I disagree with what you're saying. You're saying I'm, not in favor of it. And I disagree completely. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit. And John, what do you think about that? You're kind of a neutral guy like me in the middle.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's so many ways that the establishment, the current system is broken, and we're not even addressing the fixes. We're trying to, the establishment just doubles down in their defense of the broken system. And so we see all these problems with the election system, but no one's, saying, okay, we got to reform this. We're going to make it better. It's just like it's doubling down saying, believe it, believe it. This is the way it works. You have to believe, and any questioning of it is heresy. So, I mean, I'd much rather see things fixed, and trying to create a kind of a get people to opt in. to the system,
So
right? You get people to vote with their feet, but why don't we do that? Why can't we do that? A confident country would do it. You'd build something that people would opt into, that people would want to be part of.
So John Bender Jr., thank you so much for being here. It says you thought there would be fraud. They're saying that to me, and they're also saying it to John too, right? So I'll respond a sliver to it, and then I'll let John respond to the whole of it. Yeah, of course there was going to be fraud. If you call somebody Hitler for 4 years, and it's interesting, and I'll let John talk about it, so please do while I scroll through more questions. But one of the things I've noticed is, and I discussed this with Paul Godfrey, and I'm definitely going to discuss it with Jack Posobiec, is that people have become so atomized, right? And it's like they're going through like this centrifugal force, and they've been so atomized, and they're so solipsistic now, particularly even more because they're all locked away in their home, that there's not even an agreement on what words mean anymore. So yeah, I thought there was going to be fraud because the elites have been for the last 4 years broadcasting these beacons, like I said before, and all of them, the net result of all of them was it's the only way you can it's ethical to relieve yourself of this displeasure of this worst nightmare of Winston Smith's rat. It's okay to cheat your way out of your exposure to the rat. So if that's your worst fear, is that it's the rat. For some people, it was LGBTQ persecution. Whatever it is, those beacons were really effective. And so that the media was clearly saying it's okay to cheat to relieve yourself of that imminent threat. So yeah, of course there was going to be fraud. I think this is the worst case of fraud perhaps in American history, because it's never been so instrumentalized. John, I spoke a lot about it. Now you speak, please.
No, I mean, elections are knife fights. I mean, it's been that way in America, particularly during contentious times. You got to expect that. I mean, especially as decentralized as we are. I mean, there's not just one system for doing everything, and it's not all regularized, and it's not all standardized, and there's all these little twists and turns in state-specific regulations, and all these localities are participating. I mean, in a very contentious, tribalized environment like this, you got to expect it. And given the way the system's designed, the way it's built, and if you call that, if you call it and you focus in on it, you're gonna find it. And I don't think it was restricted to the left. I fully expected to see it on the right too, but no one's on the left is even doing it because they don't consider even engagement in this at this point. It's something they're going to do. They just assume that if they just say it's over, it's over.
So we're going to continue. We're going to continue on and with Dr. Sexy, and I will say I know one thing about Dr. Sexy, and that is that they have 2 cats. And I've seen a picture of them. So they were kind enough to show me the picture, and that's all I know. And they retained their anonymity, and I'm sure I'll never encounter those cats walking down the street and say, hey, I know who you are. So Dr. Sexy says, and I don't know about this stuff, so other people, I'd like your responses to this as well, because I don't know. Dr. Sexy says, Trump used the Ron Paul apparatus that the establishment tried to stop. John?
What does that mean, though? Do you understand the question, or maybe I don't understand the question?
I do have a sense of it because Ron Paul did have a lot of the dissenter, the more peaceful type of people. If I recall, him and Kucinich both tried to broker a peace with Gaddafi.
Oh yeah, the libertarian dissent. Yeah, that's all been absorbed into Trump. It's one of the wings. Like I said, there isn't one way of agreeing on everything. That's just a portion of the insurgency, a portion of the open source effort here. Yeah, they got absorbed in, and if that was what we're answering there.
Yeah. So thank you so much for being here. And here's an interesting point, and I think Generator 16 made it yesterday in their own way. And Texas Renegade, and I can't really see the picture, but Texas Renegade, I think that's your microphone, John. So Texas Renegade says,
I'm not touching it. I'm not doing anything.
Yeah. Okay. Then it's your plants. It's a little shop of horrors, and they're messing up your microphone. So Texan Renegade says 2 presidents And Generator 16 said something I was thinking about today, and I didn't respond to it when they said it yesterday. But they said there's two popes, and I thought about that. That's really interesting because this is a papal schism. Isn't this a papal schism?
Yeah, but we saw something similar with Not My President. Remember that in 2016, 17? Saw that everywhere.
Yeah, but this is much more pronounced.
Yeah, well, there was actually I mean, Hillary kind of fell apart and headed to her vacation homes and disappeared. But I mean, Trump's going to be out there actually spinning and spinning and spinning. I mean, he needs to. I mean, because that allows him to continue to have the insurgency at his back when he's under pressure in the courts and everything else, and he can continue to raise money against that continue to keep the organization going, keeping his legal defenses going. So it's a matter of life and death for him. He has to be there. He has to be out there. And so, yeah, it's going to be different. I mean, having somebody who says, look, we're now going to be in a world where people claim that the election was stolen. And Stacey Abrams did it in Georgia. She created now she's a national figure because she said she was, the election was stolen from her, and that now she raises money on a national stage, and she's able to play kingmaker in a state.
We're going to go on because there's a lot of interesting questions, and Generator 16 says something. I would like to get your comment about it, because I read all of John's blogs, and I hope everyone follows him. It's John Robb on Twitter, and then there's a link to his Patreon there. And before the world came to Substack, which I'm not that big of a fan of, and I like Patreon. To be honest with you, I think I found a lot of really good content from. I like the way they recommend stuff, recommendation engine, and you can be anonymous on it, which I really like. While as Substack, I don't think allows the consumer to be anonymous on it, which creates new problems if ever there's a identity theft, which happens a lot. So Generator 16 says the Trump News Network would take over. In early 2016, John was commenting that one of the vulnerabilities of Trump was that he didn't create his own technological platform to broadcast his messaging, and what he did is co-opted Twitter. So John.
And Fox, yeah, he relied on them, but he was still vulnerable because he didn't build his own technology platform. And I don't know if he has the management chops to pull that off. So, looking at me, he's a real estate guy, and it's a different skill set than running a media empire. And so, yeah, it was one of the big weaknesses on the right and it continues to be on the right, and particularly with Trump, is that they never built an alternative, kind of a technological platform that would continue to get their message out. And the thing is, it's not, people say, oh, yeah, it should be Parler or whatever, but those things are just, direct competitors with existing stuff, and they're small compared to a globe spanning alternative. What you need is something new and something different. And there was plenty of ways to do that, but they just never pulled it off.
So I think one of my most beloved people, unfortunately, has left his body. And that was Reece Schonfeld, and he co-founded CNN with Ted Turner. And it is conceivable. It was Ted Turner's kind of like idea, right? And then he needed, Reece to execute on it and to operate it. But Trump does have a lot of money, so he could be that Ted Turner.
Oh no, sure, he can be. He knows how to get media attention. He knows how to get out in front of stuff. He's very effective as that.
And doesn't he?
But if he can co-opt Fox, right? Does he need to build it up?
Fox is done. No, let me tell you, Fox is done. I can tell you why they're doing what they're doing.
Right.
Because they've been excluded from China's money. One of the reasons that the conservative media was anti-Chinese Communist Party, was still bringing awareness to it up until very recently, is because they didn't have any Chinese Communist Party money, right? While as all the others did. And so much so that Fox, the parent company, had to spin out one of its assets in order to take in some money. And now they're definitely becoming much more aligned, what you would call tribal alignment or whatever you call it.
With China, and that means anti-Trump, right?
I mean, I'm an expert on it, so I can tell you. I see the messaging that they're sending out, and they're already very helpful in erasing the timeline within their conservative kind of constituents of China, Chinese Communist Party. So let me distinguish Chinese Communist Party's culpability and criminality with the virus. And I'm kind of, as a lot of people here know, I'm kind of an expert on it. I don't discuss it too much. So, and also the World Health Organization's violations of international health regulations that were built in 2005. So, no, I know exactly what Fox is doing. Fox, people are saying, well, they're going to lose revenue. They don't care because they're going to get it back from China. Trust them. So here is an interesting question. So thank you very much, Cliff Milner, for being here. And I'm going to start ripping through everyone's questions. So, John, you're in a speed round. We were going to go for half an hour. This is awesome. So Cliff Milner says, are companies capturing tribal network messaging?
Yeah, they're going to try to co-opt it, embrace and extend it.
But is it coming from the corporations and then cascading down where they're initiating these messaging? Or are they taking messaging that's out on the street and bringing it into their own brand?
Correct. They're taking from the network. The network's doing the innovation, and they're adopting it. They're embracing it. I don't think they'll be able to use the kind of Microsoft strategy of dominance, where they'll embrace the standard and extend it and make it their own, and then those extensions are exclusive of what was in the past. No, they're aligning, and they're taking that messaging and incorporating it into their products, and incorporating their hiring and the way they do business. And that's an alignment process.
But so how much of Black Lives Matter, and I'm not talking about the cultural issues of it, because, that's so complex and so nuanced. So removing ourselves from just the cultural issuurs and a significant.
Yeah, anti-racism is bigger than BLM. It's a larger tribe. Yeah, BLM's a component, and it's a very valuable brand, probably worth a couple billion easy.
So how much of that was just a marketing campaign that the big companies sent downward, looking for consumers, or did they just see the velocity of that was going on in the real world and then just bringing it into their brand? Because I assume that the megacorps were pushing that down to be disruptive, and you're saying that.
No, they're trying to do that to avoid disruption and avoid being on what they could consider the wrong side of history, right? So they're adopting it, bringing it inside, and they're saying, okay, if we all align and all folks, march in the same direction, we're safe, and that this gives us protection in the future. Yeah, that's what alignment does. If you align with the Chinese Communist Party and you say nothing bad about them, you're not going to be singled out and destroyed.
So I'm going to ring the bell. I just rang the bell. That sucks, doesn't it? It sucks. I rang the bell, but it's the game show. It's the game show, right? So J Love 88 says the left is going to do away with Biden. John, is that going to happen?
No, they're going to attack him all constantly. I mean, the guy didn't run on anything. He didn't run on any. There was no platform. There was nothing there. I mean, it's a non-campaign. I mean, he was just basically, I'm not Trump.
Have you seen the people that he's been bringing into office? Now he wants to bring in Rahm Emanuel, and I mean, these are just bad, crooked.
The hardcore old school establishment folks, right? And that's what Harris is from, that in the San Francisco establishment, right? I mean, so that whole crowd is going to be hardcore, hardcore politics.
What's your answer to J Love 88? And J Love 88 again says left is going to do away with Biden.
Everything that they try to do is going to be hammered from the left, from the tribes on the left. And what it means, do away with them is make them totally ineffective. So they won't be at his back. They'll be on his back. It's a big difference. And the right's going to be tribalizing and disrupting everything he does going forward. And particularly if they retain the Senate and put pressure on the senators. So there's no going forward for Biden.
Wow. I don't know. That's so interesting, because I would imagine something different, but that's what makes our conversation and the conversation here with everybody else so interesting, because we all have kind of a different vision, but it's going to happen one way or another. It's like,
you think he's going to be effective?
Yes, extremely effective, because I think the media will roll out the red carpet. They've already done it, and the left is now going to be persecuted by the left. I think It's going to all be channeled. It's one of the reasons I'm really excited about speaking with Jack Posobiec, because, well, actually, he corrected me, so it's Posobiec. But I'm going to say Posobiec. I'll get used to saying Posobiec, I guess, after a while. But so I think they're going to start being utilized as well to attack the non-compliant left.
Okay.
And I think that the Antifa is kind of the militant arm of the establishment, and the left that might try and coax Biden to universal health care or a Green New Deal, which nobody believes there's going to be like a Green New. I mean, nobody in it, it's rhetoric, right? I'm an investor, so I mean, I can appreciate that, and we're all adults here, so we know that politicians will say some things. But the left really believes that there's going to be this type of thing beyond just its rhetoric. They really genuinely believe it. So I think that the Antifa will have to beat the left up that thinks that really demands a Green New Deal and a Green New Deal, and they're very smart, so they'll see what it looks like. Antifa will just attack them next.
You think they could get it by the Senate if the Republicans retain control?
Oh yeah, the Senate is just like Biden, just like Obama. Obama was extremely congenial to power, and power was very congenial to him. He did a lot of damage.
But I don't know. I mean, in this environment, and it's the reason why you didn't see senators and congressmen flipping, is that they will be dead. They'll be gone. I mean, they'll be harassed to the end of their term if they what?
They don't care anymore.
Just watch.
You're looking. Okay, that's awesome.
Look,
so good.
You could say you don't care because you don't worry about your next term, but if you're going to be harassed, and your kids are going to be harassed, and your wife's going to be harassed, and everyone is going to be harassed, and you're going to be trolled, and you're going to be, it's just not worth it. It's not worth it to do it. I mean, you could say, you'd rather go off and play golf, and do what senators do, right? It's just then take that kind of heat. I don't see if the Senate is still Republican, I don't see any of them flipping ranks. I think it's going to be a straight line. So and everything they're going to do is going to be stymied by the Senate and then attacked and by the left and the right.
See, I don't see that. I see Biden being looked at as some great reconciliator or reconciler, and it's just I see Biden being codifying megacorp rule. I see his role as essential to codify the megacorp rule. And I think that it's the changes that we've seen, the transformation in our people operating system are irrevocable. And after Biden, I call this dark city. I think I knew that this quarantine, and I was writing about it in March. And you and I even did a scope about it. It's going to continue to be weaponized. And you're more of an expert on the tribal nature of it. But I've been observing it, and I think a lot of people are very aware of it, and it's going to allow Amazon to take over. And there's really nothing against. There's Amazon, Facebook. They really don't have any real adversary. I mean, they've got posers like Elizabeth Warren and Cicelyne in Florida who are who can speak the language, but they don't want anything. I mean, Warren is Warren. But so Janet Mahoti, thank you so much for being here. And what a nice picture that is. Says her expectation of Biden is he only makes it 1 year maximum before Kamala takes over. John, what do you think of that?
No, it's mostly a Harris presidency. It was that way from the beginning. I mean, Joe's like he just goes out there and he's like gives everyone a bear hug, and he's like everything's gonna be great, and but he's not driving policy. He's not doing anything. I mean, he's just not in that mode. I mean, his schedule, from what I can see, was only like a meeting a day. The guy's he's in first gear. There's no acceleration going into here. He doesn't have a big agenda. And so it's up to Harris to do what she does, but and she'll be calling the shots from the get-go.
So if I think of these people as more and more, I think that the elites and the megacorps are no longer needing to preserve the facade of the executive office, of the judiciary, of the legislative branches. So I think that people, for some reason, people have already accepted the transformation of our people operating system into one that's now kind of megacorpian, and I'll talk about it some other time. But we're living in the prequel to the future of the science fiction future. We're living in a prequel to it, and I think people have already accepted that they like megacorps. They like the responsiveness from Google, the customer service from Google, more than they like the responsiveness and
So
service.
that's why Amazon's like the most trusted brand in America. It's like,
Really?
well, yeah. I mean, and if you look at all the other things, including many of the U.S. government services and stuff, it's like 2-to-1 versus Amazon. And, it's like this is the kind of thing people are opting into Amazon, right? Because it keeps on providing them services and does stuff for them, and it makes it seamless.
People are given no choice, and we'll discuss that in a different day because I'm going to go into these questions because there's so many interesting things. So
I had a choice in 2000 when I started buying from. Or actually, 97 when I started buying from them, right?
Yeah,
it was just something that fit my lifestyle and what I did.
So no worries 2020 says stopthesteal.us. Yeah, they're doing a good thing. I don't know why the left wouldn't be embracing them just as the left should be embracing them vigorously because they're just as vulnerable as the right is to being taken out. These Detroit mothers aren't voting these politicians in. So
they say that. I think the common narrative on the tribal left is this is a coup attempt.
Is this a coup attempt?
Yeah, this is an attempt at a coup d'etat
by Trump.
By Trump and his supporters.
They really believe that too.
100%.
They do, and I have such really good friends that are on the left, and they're kind of very militant on the left. And I know a lot of hacktivists and anarchists, and I know a lot of people that are on the kind of malicious side of hacking too. And they're so smart. They do believe it though, and it's weird that their pain tolerance for this type of corruption is just so high. I don't know. It's just a weird thing. So stop.
No, but they look when you're in a tribal mindset, anything that you present, the other tribe presents as facts. Like, okay, this and this and this and this are facts. They don't see it as facts. They see it as malicious information, disinfo. They don't see it as real. So the conversation doesn't even start. There's not even any.
Well, here's something interesting. And then I want to get onto people's questions because people are so nice to be with us for almost 2 hours now. And you and I discussed this with Chuck Pizecki on a different Periscope. And I hope Chuck is here because I'm so impressed by him. I was observing how I keep a log. A lot of people know this. I keep a daily log of, I call it the COVID log, but now it's kind of much more comprehensive because it includes Black Lives. It includes everything. I call this the fastest roll-up of power in history. And I wanted to record it because I think someday people will be very interested in how the prequel to science fiction movie occurred, right? So I'm writing the prequel, in fact. So, but I used to try and describe it to people, what's going on and, all the things that are going on. And people didn't really understand it because people just want to turn things into postcards. And their minds, unlike, John and I are both in our 50s, right? I'm 54. And you and I grew up in a work environment where boss would offer you a job and they say, go, give me a call in 2 or 3 days and discuss it with your wife and, tell me if you want the job, I'll hold it for you. And then you and I probably also remember when they would say, you know what, we're not going to give you a couple of days, walk around the block a couple of times, come back in a few hours, get some lunch, tell me if you want the job. Now, people today, these younger people are having to they're having to take complexity and under great emotional stress, kind of make decision rules and file it away, right? And they're doing it under a lot of stress. So now it's kind of like the boss is saying to you, you've got a fraction of a second to decide whether you want this job. So as soon as they say, I'm giving you the job, you've got to respond in that microsecond. That's how quickly people are making these decision rules and are filing into their file cabinet. So I can't even discuss my log or what's going on with people.
Right. No, the volume of information is too high, right? And if you can't go back and look at the old stuff because it's already so dated, it's ancient history. All you can do is pick the salient pieces out from that data flow on an ongoing basis and construct patterns that make sense of it for you. And those patterns, if used maliciously, become the patterns used by tribes to form. But on our daily basis, in our daily scan, all we're doing is finding the interesting bits and if we have good frameworks to fit them in, then we can make sense of what's going on. I mean, that's
So
what I do, is just try to build frameworks for people.
Yeah, you are awesome. You truly are awesome. You're very unique. There's not that many John Robbs that I know of out there. There's I don't think in America. I know a Spanish John Robb. I think you probably know some of them too, who have been really good at documenting and chronicling the Catalan separatist type of thing, because there was a lot going on there. You know, there's some interesting people, but a lot of them are in Europe because they're very used to kind of the communist type of infiltration, the movements, and all the things that they do there to cause heck in the world. So Satoshi Yi, thank you so much for being here. And I recall you're very involved in virtual reality. So you asked about that in the sales thing, and then also when I did the investor series about India. So Satoshi Yi says, Scott Adams has a great point. Where are the data scientists on the left?
John? Yeah, but you're assuming that they trust any of the information that's discovered by the right to be information. They see it just malicious and disinfo, and they're not there to dispute anything. They don't want to dispute it. It's over as far as they're concerned. Anything to the contrary is disinformation. So that's how they're fighting it. It's over. Get over it. We're going to line up the courts. We're going to line up the media. We're going to line up everybody that will listen to say the same thing and build the consensus necessary to crush this dissent. So
we're going to, and I listen or watch the Periscopes pretty frequently with Scott Adams. I like it because he's very good at doing kind of the postmortem on ideas. He's very good at, and kind of in a game, when you play chess or you play Scrabble, you look after the game is over, you look at all the alternative plays that you could have done and why they might have been more optimal. So and Scott,
I mean, there's a timeline on all this. This all has to do with certification and when the votes are reported, right? So if you can win the certification, it doesn't really matter if you have court cases and everything else. You got the certified votes, and they're going to Congress, and they will be counted against the tally, and Biden will be president. I mean, that's just the way it goes. Either you get him or you don't, and it looks like the certification is going in Biden's favor. So. The process is the process. This is not open-ended. I mean, the feeling that it will be open-ended will be there, right? And that it will be in contention will be there for a long time, and that's going to keep the right going.
Can you bring me on? So we're going to continue. Bring me Annie. Everyone's going to get a chance to see my cat because we're going to be closing soon. So Scott, so Scott Adams asked a lot of really good questions, and one day I'm going to have to kind of clarify on our agreements and our disagreements because I appreciate his work so much. So Janet says one of the few bringing things to light is Judicial Watch, and I think Tom Fitton was just suspended from Twitter, at least for a certain amount of time. I don't know what they call that stuff, but it is a shame. And I will say that they were definitely very good and litigious in making FOIA claims. I think they're the number one. And, Hillary. So when people talk about the Biden thing, I think of Judicial Watch for a certain reason, because Hillary was able to keep herself out of trouble for many, many years, even going back to her time in the White House. And I voted for Bill, and I like Bill, and I've given him a lot of money, hosted them, and I know them. But she was able to, keep the prosecution at bay because she overcomplexified everything and slow walked it, right? So she understands the processes really well, and her lawyers understand it, Cheryl Mills and everybody else. And now with Biden, they're complexifying, and rather than slow walking, they're doing everything extremely quick. So I knew they were going to choose this as a moment for their real full out assault because there is kind of a very hard deadline. And I love Judicial Watch. I don't know why people think of them as conservative. I don't think justice should have that type of a thing. And I think we all have to be in pursuit. We all have to keep, we all have to be in pursuit of truth. We have to be. And
there's like certain dates for certain states, and when those dates go and the certification occurs, the votes just continue to accumulate. And on both sides, and when one gets over the limit, it gets over the limit. But there's people think that just make if you could just will it to stay open and stay in contention, and there's not that when there's a process like this, It can
John,
be manipulated in ways that cause it to close.
we're on to the next thing, John. So
What?
we're on to the next thing. I got you, right? I buzzed.
Yeah.
So Music Obscure, thank you so much for being here. I'm trying to see. Oh, I like that. It's a kind of like a headphones with a brain in the middle. So Music Obscure, thank you so much for being here. It says Trumpism, their definition that they've used of it is if it's broke, fix it. And I would say that's really not, that's very interesting, but that's an example of it. So I'm really looking, that's a feat. That's something that's definitely in it. It's a characteristic of it, but I'm looking for something that's kind of uniquely it, because I'm wondering what it's going to look like next. And I think we've discussed that a lot here, and John's been really helpful and everybody else has been really helpful. So here, Herb Meyer 29 says many tentacles of government will be cut off over the next 4 years if Trump retains office. Do you think, John, that and everybody else, do you think that if Trump retains office now, he's the vindictiveness that's been cast upon him, he's now able to really return that courtesy and really shut down some of those departments? I mean, John, what do you think? Do you think if he can retain office that he now goes after his oppressors?
I don't see how he can retain office.
But if he can, let's just say he can. Let's just say
okay. I mean, without people, physically attacking the White House and taking him out. Yeah, I think if he could make a legal argument that he did or whatever, and if you could pull the legislature, you could win them over and get them to set the electors in his camp and the critical states that matter, and override the whatever the decision that was made there, and pull off the election. I don't think people would see it as legitimate. I think they would storm the White House. And I don't think the military would do anything to stop it, or police. They'd just let it happen. So I don't see it. I don't see it happening. I mean,
we're all speechless. The whole place just took a breath because, John, you're so good, and it's something to consider. I mean, it's interesting. It's interesting when you say they would let it happen. It's interesting, and
they wouldn't let it. I mean, they wouldn't let it happen.
I understand they couldn't let it happen, but just the kind of the visuals of that, right?
When there's 2 million people in DC and they're marching on the White House, there's not much you can do.
Yeah. So, what do you think would be the military response?
Well, already knowing the tone and tenor of the military leadership, they'd sit it out.
But how would they?
I mean, they're pretty much, from what I can see of the generals, they're already pretty much in line behind Biden.
But
on with business as usual.
But they've got an obligation to halt any type of an attack against the executive officer of the country, don't they? I mean, how would they stop 1 million people?
No, they wouldn't see him as an illegitimate executive wow. To give them an order. They just would sit it out. I mean, they're ready to get back to business as usual. The big establishment money pipeline wars. They're ready to get back to the way things were.
Well, I'll have to listen to that clip again. I usually get chocolate after this and then listen to these things. So, wow, I'm really interested. So, Ron Breeden, thank you again for being here. Says solipsism syndrome. I have that list. Solipsism syndrome, good one. That's why I always say solipstick, because then I don't have that difficulty with the S at the tail end of it. So, solipsism syndrome, good one. Yeah, it's something that John can describe a lot more. You're not going to get a chance to right now, though. But it's something that John in his log discusses all the time. And Chuck does as well, is how just atomized everybody is becoming. And, people, again, I feel like they're, those rides where it spins around so quickly that everyone's stuck to the wall. I feel like the centrifugal force is ripping society apart. And some part of it's deliberate, and John would argue that some part of it's not. But nevertheless, it's the centrifugal force, and people are becoming atomized even more so now that they're locked in their house, and they're becoming these kind of like almost non-rulable. I think that's what I tweeted out actually today. They're becoming kind of non-rulable, anti-consequentialist, Um, they they uh, they think that they can solve all the complexities and intricacies of the world with their own introspection. And there is no agreement on language. They're not speaking the same language. One of the interesting things about Twitter that I've learned, and I think a lot of us have learned, is Twitter of the social platforms has the highest IQ user and probably the most the more active reader, right? And you don't get that on Facebook, which is like a political gauntlet. And it's just kind of interesting how many of them are now moving to their online life as their only type of existence. And you can actually see that change in Twitter. You can see that you're getting a whole bunch of new people that don't have the offline life anymore like they used to. It used to be people were converting some of it to their online. It's just really interesting. So they don't, but these people don't even speak the same language. They don't. Their gender means one thing to me, and it means something, and it sounds the same. The words are the same, but there's no agreement.
Mean entirely different things, right? And the online world is their center of gravity for this conflict, and it's also the center of gravity for many people nowadays. It's where they know most people. They have the most conversations. It is their social circle. And the thing is, unlike the old social circle where you're kind of stuck with the people that are around you physically, which represent usually a wide variety of views, the way you do it on the internet, the way you do it in social networking is you self-select it. You select the people that agree with you or you feel more comfortable with. And that tends to, create that kind of tribal language and tribal viewpoint.
So
there's no agreement. There's no coming back. It's unless we can come up with some way to create a more open dynamic that's not so contentious, where you have dissent and it doesn't tribalize, and you have consensus and it doesn't tribalize, and they're not at each other's throats, and it's not existential threat that's driving both to attack each other.
Well, we're going to go on a little bit, and then I'm going to show everyone my count. We're going to hang up, and I really appreciate this. Has been a long dinner with everybody, and we've all this has been awesome. So there's a couple more things, and and thank you, by the way, for that, Ron. I've actually spent months trying to understand and come up with the right vocabulary so I could understand what's going on. And I've been spending a lot of time rereading Plato dialogues, rereading a lot of philosophy, and it's really helpful to me. And I would recommend there's online courses you can take. There's also the books you can take. It's really helpful because these are all very thousands of years old problems. None of this is new. And I've really needed to go back to some of the language and some of the kind of conceptual frameworks to better understand this. And I'll recommend books to people at a different time. So George Purcell, thank you so much for being here. Says the left thinks citizens, non-citizen distinction is illegitimate. John, what do you think?
Yeah, that's one thing. It's already used in the way they allocate political power in the states, right? So when they do the census, they don't ask the question about citizenship. That census data is then used to allocate political power. It's used to allocate congressional seats, electoral college votes, and it's a census of all the people according to the very tight wording of it. It's a census of all the people living in that area. But that's kind of messed up because what you should be doing is allocating votes and political power based on the number of citizens that live in a state, not on the number of people that live in the state. So that's already there. That's already in the mix. So that that's kind of one of those really weird things that's underlying a lot of our political power or political situation in the United States. It's just these weird setups that are just delegitimizing in some respect.
So we're going to thank you so much for that, John. We're going to continue on. Yvonne Burton is here, and what a nice picture that is. Oh, and I recognize that person in the middle and the dress that says Trump. And I've seen some of Yvonne's periscopes also. They're very thoughtful. So Yvonne says motor vehicle was the end of our elections as we know them. Opened up grand scale cheating.
Motor voter?
Is that what it's called? Motor voter? Yeah, I'm not that familiar with that type of stuff, but it does seem like it definitely created that volatility. And let me just go. There's so many questions here. Let me just scroll. So I'm going to let you continue to talk about motor voter while I go back to some of those questions because there's a lot, John, and I want to rip through them. So, John, can you continue talking about?
Oh well, voting. I mean, basically voting. Not in person, voting through mail, voting for, being absent and voting ahead of time. That introduced a lot of delay into the process. It made it possible to go out and harvest votes, where you have people standing over the person that was voting and saying, or you check the box kind of thing. Yeah, that messed things up, and yeah, definitely not something that's conducive to building legitimacy in the system. I mean, so much of the stuff that we should be doing across all these systems is trying to add additional legitimacy to them, make them work better in a way that people buy into, and we're not doing that.
So here, the first purge. Thank you so much for being here. And I didn't know you could get one of those things that has the eyes blinking like that. It's pretty awesome. Although I don't like that thing too much. So the first purge is Georgia certified yesterday, had a MAGA rally today. Dollar late much, and I don't know, John. So you're saying that Trump has to continue doing these MAGA rallies?
No, he's going to continue doing it. Sure.
You're saying that.
Yeah, he's never going to end. This is never going to stop.
Really? Wow, that's so fascinating. So you're my friend. Says Trump will have a competing rally on Inauguration Day that will attract thousands. So John, you're really saying that he has to do this,
right? And the insurgency wants it. They don't want to become irrelevant. They don't want to fall apart. And this is something that he continues to disrupt the system and keep it on its heels. Yeah, they'll support him.
So if you want to continue on that a little bit, just because there's so many questions here and I'm scrolling through all of them. So John, would you mind continuing with that? You're my friend, because it is interesting about how it's actually a requirement for him to continue having those rallies. And I suppose hopefully those rallies, after enough time, will kind of build up their own administration that can be his successor too.
Yeah, I mean, we keep on thinking about this only in the context of politics, right? So, I just thought this election was just a milestone on a larger ongoing conflict. That it wasn't the end point, and it wasn't even the most important point. It was just a mile marker that just went by at a high rate of speed. Who's in the White House? It matters somewhat, but whoever's in the White House is going to be hamstrung and politically neutered, and it's just a question of who has a different kind of pulpit, or different mechanism to get their word out and how they communicate. But yeah, no, this is an ongoing guerrilla war and guerrilla information war. It's going to continue to be fought for many, many, many years in the future.
So we're going to continue on. Thank you very much, Sean. And Green Eyes 7997, and those certainly are Green Eyes, says, so you don't think Sidney, I think that's Sidney Powell or something like that. I don't know these people's names that well. So you don't believe Sidney is correct when she said they have the evidence to overturn the election. I think she probably does have adequate evidence if such things mattered. And I'm saying that, truth requires an audience, and there doesn't seem to be an audience for it. And sometimes words don't really matter. All that matters is the actions and the result. And they've
well, it has to be believed by. Okay, so the courts have to accept it, and then the legislators have to, in those states, have to accept it and put it into place, and change the composition of the electors are sending to the votes are sending to DC, and I don't see that process working in Trump's favor. And it's not to say that he won't stop. Or he will stop. He won't stop. He just keep on going, and it just is.
So we're going to continue on, and this is from Southern Grace Ones. Thank you so much for being here. It's a very interesting thing. They say perspective. In 2017, when going on sales calls, my American flag lapel was offensive to many.
Yeah, that's the network tribalism we have right now is in large part a replacement for the decline of the kind of old tribalism, which was nationalism, that has been in decline. since WMDs and financial crisis and on and on. It's been shrinking and tarnished. And for many, it was like Trump was additional hit on that, and his election tarnished this idea of a united America.
And I will say, I'll say, let me just add, I'm going to interrupt, right? That a lot of people think that don't understand that in China, right? I'm going to change the subject a little bit. It's even actually a much worse problem. That this isn't just unique to America. It's just that you don't see it in China, because on the mainland, where all the protests and all the riots are occurring, they're much more physical. There's much more violence. It's just that there's not cameras, right? They're not an open system. And there is no soft power that exists out that has intruded into China. There is no expression of soft power in China. And they're very forceful in how they even treat their own diaspora. So I'm going to continue on. So Sierra Foothills gal, thank you so much for being here. Says, how can John be so optimistic about this? Aren't you worried? And let me just say about John, and I'll let John say it about John, is that I followed his log, and John and I have spoken offline, and John's a great guy. You have to understand about John, you can't attach politics to John. You can't. John, and I'll let him give his biography at the end, but John is an observer, and he's not a partisan. So I think he's just trying to, as much as he can, to understand these things from a system view.
Right.
So John, do you want to explain that yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, since I started writing a blog in 2003. I was part of this effort to build a social networking back then. And so I've looked at terrorism, in a very kind of dispassionate way, and allowed me to be a better analyst, and I can figure it out better than a lot of the people that were, on either side. And it just continued forward. Just the way I found that my analysis is better if I can step outside of it and look for patterns, look for the way the system works. And I mean, it's kind of funny, because when I was doing terrorism stuff and terrorism analysis, I mean, I had a lot of people in the JSOC and the CIA, NSA, and others were all reading my stuff, saying they loved it. And I also got fan mail from the terrorists and the guerrillas around the world. Got invited to Nigeria to, that kind of stuff, but of course I didn't go. But the thing is that there was a, fan mail from that side too. So John, it's kind of a weird place to be. It's like you're in this but it doesn't, for whatever reason, I think long-term that we're going to do okay. It's just,
I agree.
You can see the mechanism.
I am very bullish. People always confuse my observations of our transformation of our people operating system, and in kind of the displacement of our Constitution for kind of a terms of service and a lot of other ways I've described it, as bearishness on or some type of pessimism about the future. And I'm extremely optimistic. I mean, just really optimistic. I think it's very important, and people who watch my investor series know this, that I'm an investor, right? That if you have an expectation of the future, right? And I feel that mine has been, crystallizes, and I've seen these things go, kind of go as expected, that you have an obligation to yourself, to your family, to not suffer the future. So if you know that the future is dumbing kids down, and it's giving them no moral compass, and again, they're just nihilist and just bad, that in order not to suffer that future, you need to make sure your kids get a really good education, and that they're attached to some type of a moral framework. Because, so I think if you know what the future is, that the only way your kids are going to be able to succeed in the future is to have an exceptional command of language, have exceptional appreciation of the arts and of history and culture, because that's still going to be valuable. It's just that there's going to be kind of a discrimination testing between the plebs and the elites. And the elites are still going to want to try and preserve, the language and history and everything else. And if a child doesn't have that kind of interest in those type of things, I think that a child